Welcome to Paradise in the Pines, a podcast about the people, places, and stories that make this the home of American golf. Brought to you by the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
And welcome to Paradise in the Pines. I'm Phil Wurz, the president and CEO of the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're joined today by Taylor Clement, the new mayor of Southern Pines. Welcome to Paradise in the Pines.
Thank you for having me, Phil.
How does that sound, mayor? The new mayor of Southern Pines. Have you gotten used to it yet?
No, it's probably going to take me 4 years to get used to it.
And then you'll run again.
We'll see. We'll see. It's a lot of work, and I am looking forward to doing 4 years of work, and then we'll see what happens after that.
You've been part of the town council prior to your being elected mayor. What has that experience been like? Because that's not your background. We'll get into that.
It's not. It's been a learning experience, but I feel like being on the town council really... It's not a skill set. It's the ability to learn. It's the ability to listen to people and to pick up on cues and acquire information and process it. So a lot of it's common sense, but I've actually really enjoyed being on it, which is what led me to run for mayor.
I think when you said the word listen, I think a lot of people think politicians, if you will, do not listen.
We're known for talking.
You work for the people, right?
We do. Yeah.
It's refreshing to hear that, and so why is that so important to listen versus implementing what you feel your agenda, if you will, as most people feel politicians try to do?
So I guess I don't have an agenda. I feel like I am out there to represent the people who elected me. When I come up with issues or I see issues in the community, it tends to be things that people tell me about or things that people are talking to me about, which as a resident a couple of years ago, I had. And I wanted someone to go to and talk to. And it's a whole lot easier to come up with concerns and agenda items and things to address when I don't have to think of them.
Right.
So I can let other people come with their issues. And I think politicians across the board are supposed to be listeners. And I think some of them try. And I think the bigger you get, the harder that is. Understood.
Yeah, I hear you. You're not originally from here. Talk about where you're from. You're from Kentucky. I will tell you, and I'll be completely transparent, I am a Duke fan. Oh. So I know UK. I know you went to UK. Yep. So, but anyway, talk about your background, where you came from.
I am a Kentucky fan. I think if you're from Lexington, Kentucky, that's expected of you. I grew up in Lexington. I went to boarding school, which is unusual, but I was in Virginia for boarding school. Went back to Kentucky.
Where was that?
For college.
Where in Virginia?
Alexandria.
Okay.
So right outside D.C. I loved the area. I loved being near D.C. I loved the number of people and transit and activities to do was very different from Lexington, especially as a young person. When you can't drive, it feels like there's not a whole lot of options. And I still have family back in Lexington. It changed so much from the time that I moved there as a young child to when I left after college. We were in the middle of horse country. There was tobacco farms around us, and by the time I left, it was a shopping center and a lot of traffic and a lot of suburban growth. I would call it sprawl. I think that there's solutions other than sprawl, and I guess that's part of what I'd like to see Southern Pines work towards.
I was going to ask you, how does that, when you saw that in your hometown and the growth that we're experiencing here, is that kind of in your mind? It's like you don't want us to become that.
It's always there, yeah. It's protecting what's important, which I believe Southern Pines it has a little bit of a reflection of Kentucky because of the horse neighborhood. Yeah. And I would love to see that be a protected part of Southern Pines. I think it's important to who we are.
You studied at UK as a marketing degree.
Yes.
But you are by trade a certified financial planner. So how did the transition to that?
So I finished college, and no one tells you after college that you don't get a job.
Right.
And my dad was in insurance, and I ended up finding the company Edward Jones, and they offered me a job. So I went down the path of, I actually moved to St. Louis for a short time, worked in their home office, and found out that being a financial planner or investment advisor is, I think, really at the core the same as all jobs. It's all about talking to people, listening to them, relating to them, and helping come up with solutions to whatever that problem is. And I found that part of financial advising I actually enjoyed. And then I got to live through the stock market crash of 2008, which significantly changed my perception of that job.
Yeah.
it was then chaos management and,
Right, I bet.
trying to handle the strong emotions that come along with financial planning. But man, when you saw the market turn in 2009 and then recover so quickly, it was a great lesson in the fact that I knew the core beliefs that I was taught and understood as the market will recover was so true. And holding hands was so important at that point, holding hands through the trauma and the chaos, because the worst possible thing would have been to sell everything you own. And I think there were people who did that. The panic sets in. And I think that's applicable probably to any job, but certainly in government as well. I think sometimes you just need to hold someone's hand and let them know that you're listening and their concerns are understood, and you're going to proceed while also understanding that we're working towards something that you may not see right now and you may not see the benefit of, but it's going to be a better outcome.
Probably another quality of that would be patience.
Oh, absolutely.
And how much is that factor in, like, when you're in panic mode or you're thinking about a crisis or you're thinking about an issue or something that's facing a town, to not make quick decisions?
Yes. Yeah. Don't be rash. Don't make quick decisions. Look at all angles. I have 3 kids. I mean, it's a lesson in patience right there. Yes. But it's important. And I think you hit a key point. And patience is something it's really hard to teach patience, and it's hard to explain to someone to be patient. But I think if it's in someone's nature, it is absolutely helpful.
What prompted the move to Southern Pines? And when did you do that?
In 2007, I got a job opportunity from Edward Jones. I worked in a cubicle, and I had a map of the United States with certain areas highlighted. For the most part, it was the Southeast. And I just knew that I wanted to go back. I lived in Charleston for a short time. I was in Georgia for a year, and I knew that I wanted to be back in the Southeast part of the United States. And so I got a great job opportunity. And I called my parents. I Googled the town. I called my parents. And I said, this is probably the best offer I'll get, but the town's too small. I was like, I've never heard of it. I looked it up. I see pictures. I mean, it's great, but it's 10,000 people. And my parents, who are golfers or were golfers at the time, said, I think you should probably look at it.
Right.
Yeah, they were like, don't skip over this. Let's go check it out before you decide. And so we came down here. And from the time I got the job offer to moving into an apartment was 8 days. It was a quick decision, a quick move. And I showed up to work and really fell in love with the town very quickly.
Yeah.
I think most people do. I think people come to visit and they fall in love with the town, which is part of why we're growing.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that I looked to my family on that decision, because I don't know that Southern Pines was what I thought was the ideal town, and it turns out it is.
And then when you were a resident of the town, you went to a First Friday, and then fate kind of took its course. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. So my father-in-law, Bill Clement, this is where it gets a little bit weird. So my job offer was at an Edward Jones office, where a financial advisor left Edward Jones. They went independent. They took all their clients with them, or the majority of them. And my job in St. Louis was to call those clients and say, you are not that person's client. You belong to Edward Jones. We are the ones we've been here helping you. We're supporting you. It's our strategies, our investment management, our resources, research. It was Bill Clement who left. And so he was an immediate competitor of mine when I moved to town. So I thought the best thing I could do was introduce myself. And I expected him to run me out of town and say, you don't stand a chance. There's no way. They're my clients. I run this place. And he was like, you should meet my son. Oh, God. And then he said he's on a punk rock tour in Canada. And I thought, there is not a worse situation of meeting someone. So,
right.
It was a blind date at that First Friday. And it was very similar to me finding Southern Pines. As soon as I saw Baxter, I thought, oh, this is not what I expected. Like, this is actually somebody that I really like.
Yeah.
Caught off guard.
Fate has a way of working its magic.
It does.
So he owns the Casino Guitar company.
Yep.
That is a beautiful building. If you live here, you know the Casino Guitar building. If you're visiting here, it's not only just a beautiful building from the exterior, but go inside this guitar shop. It is truly amazing. I mean, I would love to play guitar. I can barely work my phone, so it's a cool place.
Yes, we spent a lot of time. There was a women's shop in there, and then a coffee shop, and they had live music. So we spent a lot of effort pulling out all the old or all the new stuff and having the older things exposed, the old roof or ceiling, I guess, the brick walls. And then we covered the place with guitar hangers, and we want to be a destination guitar shop. That was part of our vision when we opened the guitar store, is people should want to come here to see the instruments, because that was something that Baxter did as a musician himself. He sought out the best shops, the ones that had the instruments he wanted or the expertise that he sought, and would go to those places. And so he has worked to add to the tourism or encourage that in a very different way. There's a couple golfers and guitarists that overlap, but we see a lot of visitors who are just looking for a different thing in town.
Talk about visitors. When you moved here in 2007, and now this destination is, the secret's out. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's partially our job in tourism. Obviously, Pinehurst Resort is crushing it. It's interesting. One of my chairman, Tom Beto,
Yes.
Used to be president of CCNC, well-respected gentleman here in the community. We're in the midst of 32 straight months of record occupancy tax collection. So when he was chairman a few years ago, we were coming out of the pandemic. We were doing extremely well. Maybe 4 months we were impacted, and we were doing great. And he's like, "What do you attribute that to?" It's like, "Well, it's great marketing." And he goes, "Well, you can't take all the credit. There were a number of things. So it takes a community. It takes a village to make those things happen." So what have you seen change from a tourism perspective from when you got here in 2007 to where we are today in 2023?
We used to say, Baxter and I would show up at events in town and say that we were the youngest people who drove ourselves. I mean, as 20, 30 somethings, we were the rarity in town. And we've seen a lot of younger people move. And I think that we've seen a lot of the tourism has changed too. There's a lot of a broad range of ages that come to town. I think the U.S. Kids Golf has brought a lot of families here from all over the world, which has been a huge benefit to all the surrounding communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have I think that there's a little bit more of a refined visitor that comes. I think people, they know the towns, they know what they want. They're going online and they're searching and they're seeing podcasts like yours or YouTube videos about things that are going on in town. And I think that they know what they're looking for when they come, which is great.
I think in some respects too, for what we see, because we see it every day, is that I think people want to escape. They want to get out of the bigger cities, out of the sprawl, all that, get back to a simpler time.
I think the simpler time is it. I think there's a feeling of visiting Southern Pines and Pinehurst and Aberdeen where you feel like you have stepped back in time, and it's a simpler life. And it's not that, we are all well educated and running good businesses, and I think that technology, we're not behind, but it's a slower pace and a focus on people, which is so much more important than some of the big cities you get caught up in, the work and the busyness. And I think people want to slow down. I think that's people want to move here because that feeling they get when they visit is something that they want to hold on to.
And talk about the growth. We love seeing the tourists here. We love coming here. The growth, I know, because we communicate with the county commissioners, I'm sure you do as well. Water is going to be a huge issue,
Yes.
the northern end of the county. I know that's not your jurisdiction.
No, but it's becoming, because I think they're looking to Southern Pines. We are the only township with a water plant.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a chance that we will work out a partnership with Moore County on expanding our plant in a way that will serve Moore County.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because I hear many times that, Village Pinehurst have, they have their town manager and they have their plan, they do their thing. Paul Savaston and Mayor Farrell, yourself and Reagan Parsons, you guys, is there a sense of community and working together versus everybody having their own idea how we should do things in our own municipalities?
I think there is, and I think there's always room for growth or improvement there. We have several councils where representatives from each area will sit together and come together once a month or once a quarter and have conversations about things that affect the county or the southern part of the county. But there's also, I sense it as a resident more than I do as a council member or a mayor. I sense an identity and a desire to protect Southern Pines.
Yeah.
And I think Aberdeen has that, and I think Pinehurst has it as well, as, well, this is who we are, and this is what's important to us. And so we hit up against these lines of what's right for the area versus what's right for us.
Yeah.
And I think some of that's just sitting down and verbalizing it and coming to agreements on what we can compromise on and what the commonalities are in a way that protects the character of each town, because they are very different.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. And it's interesting because the visitor doesn't know boundaries.
No, you don't feel
I'll
it.
meet people in Southern Pines that think they're in Pinehurst. I meet people in Pinehurst that think they're in Southern Pines. So, they just understand the experience
They do.
and the people they meet and the things they get to do when they're here. Let's talk about some things related to becoming mayor. So you take over for Mayor Haney.
Last Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, Tuesday.
As we
week and a half
record
ago,
this.
yes. Yeah.
And so she was a mentor to you. Talk about how she was that.
So when I first moved to town, Baxter ran for town council, and not many people remember that because it was 2007. It's been quite a bit of time. But it was the same time that Carol's husband was also running, Mike Haney. And so it was a very quick introduction to it being a small town, and the fact that I knew the mayor and I knew the mayor's wife and some of the council members. Baxter and I were part of a sister city exchange program with Northern Ireland, which kind of kept that involvement with town council and at least a baseline of knowing the local government leaders. And I remember going to Carol Haney's, the event the night of her election, which she ran into Baxter and I at the wine cellar and invited us. And so we showed up, and I got this sense of, oh, like this is doable. Like this is a community service, a way to give back to the community, really a community service more than a political job.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sparked not necessarily at that time to be in town council, but to be in a leadership position and to contribute back to the community.
Awesome. And talk about, I guess we're going several different directions here.
Sorry.
Let's talk about, as mayor, what are maybe the three top challenges you face?
So change is hard. That's probably the biggest challenge that we will come across in many facets, that the way that we have been growing, when we looked into our comprehensive long-range plan, it turned out people are not happy with how we're growing. And if you take our current regulations and project them out 20 or 30 years, no one likes what that looks like. And so we rewrote that comprehensive plan over the last 18 months we worked on it. But in order to implement the comprehensive long-range plan, we have to start changing some of our regulations. And I think that when you do that, any change is hard.
Yeah.
And so that will be staying focused on the goal while also listening to the current complaints and concerns, but having this long-term vision that we've worked towards. And I think for the town council, I want them to have a really good understanding of, I guess maybe for everyone in town, of what went into that comprehensive long-range plan, so that as we are, addressing concerns or complaints along the way, that long-term goal is still at the helm, so that it's leading the way.
Was that long-range plan that you're changing or modifying, was it too much sprawl, too much growth?
I think it was just unplanned growth. I think that it was written in a time that Southern Pines did not expect the kind of growth that we have experienced.
Yeah.
And so it kind of let developers lead the way on, here's some general guidelines on zoning and just, if you can do it here, do it there.
Yeah.
And now we have a much more clear focus on, this is where infrastructure exists and this is where we can grow. And then this is an area where it's open and available, but that really needs to be protected, or the character that exists there. If you grow and develop, it really needs to match that character.
Right.
So we create character districts of the town. You were at a meeting.
I was just going to mention that. And there was a really good discussion about, not so much I think it's 8 blocks around Broad Street the historic district that is not to be touched, but we were talking about the other areas. So it's interesting because every year we support the Painted Pony program with the Carolina Horse Park.
Yes.
That's a big part of what in fact, Dan, who's behind the camera here at Destination Storyteller, painted one of them one year. He went to SCAD, so he's a painter by trade. He actually painted the latest mural in Carthage. So,
that's awesome.
But
And now I want to know which horse. I'll ask you later.
It was the one that had Payne Stewart on one side and had
yes.
Peggy Kirk Bell and Donna Ross on the other
remember
side.
it.
And we actually met the lady who bought it. She came in here recently. We had no idea where it went, but we love doing that. But I asked Carolina Horse Park if could you put one at Red's Corner, because I want to see people walking that way
That's a
down
great
the
idea.
southern end of Southern Pines.
Yep.
So we saw that, and people loved it. And so we're doing that again next year.
Yep.
But there was an opportunity there, that corridor on down South Broad Street, and then we talked about Pennsylvania Avenue, potentially almost all the way to Midland Road at some point.
I think those two corridors are really ideal for development, and I don't mean development.
And I
just
think
throw
people
things
hear
in.
development.
I know it's one of those words that gets people up in
Right.
arms. It's ideal for finding opportunities to either build upon what's already there, or to. I mean, you mentioned earlier before we were on the air about the Bank of America
Right.
corner, or even the piece of property in front of the Dollar General where it's like a polished door locks has been on their sign forever. And everyone keeps saying, well, when is that going to change?
Yeah.
Or when is that going to be bought? And it's the responsibility of the property owner either to sell it or develop it. But as we see traffic start going in that direction and businesses like Red's Corner really thriving there, it puts that property at a better chance of turning into something that serves the community as opposed to it's falling apart. And that's when I say development, I guess that's what we're looking at, is either fixing up historic buildings in a way that serve the community, or putting things down that contribute to the community use of them.
I guess it's incumbent upon you and council to really have a vision. Because I talked to people like in 2023, I said, let's do what needs to be done now so we don't get to 2030 and say, you know what, I wish we did that back in 2023. So there has to be some sort of skill there. I listened one time to Natalie Hawkins, our economic development leader from Moore County, and she gets inquiries for business all the time by the dozens.
Yeah,
she
good.
turns down more because it's some things developers want to come here and do something, and she's like, that's not who we are.
Yes.
Are you kind of the same attitude that, we want to be having the luxury of being able to pick and choose what we want?
I mean, aren't we fortunate we have that luxury?
Yeah.
I mean, we are in a place in Southern Pines and Pinehurst, in all of Moore County, I think, in our growth trajectory, that people want to build here and they want to develop, and we can pick and choose what we want and what makes sense for our current residents that protects the town that they know and love, while also providing economic opportunity for people either moving here or who are already here.
Let's talk about some fun stuff. 2024, we got the U.S. Open coming to town.
Yeah.
I get asked this question all the time about like, hey, what's being done? I wasn't here in 2014, but I remember like Mark Elliott and other people in the outlying towns, not so much in the village of Pinehurst, where obviously that's a center of the universe for the U.S. Open. But I think there were some businesses and restaurants that didn't feel like they benefited from the people that came here. So what we try to tell people, we have an idea for doing a special event, but I don't think the village of Pinehurst is planning anything, at least not yet. Not that there has to be. We're telling people, go out and explore Moore County. Go to Southern Pines. Go to the restaurants. Go shopping. Go to Aberdeen. Go to Cameron and Vass. And go to all the Seagrove. I mean, go explore. So anything special the town will do here for the U.S. Open?
But I'm glad you asked, because we need to start that plan. I mean, we're expecting...
It will be June before you know it.
It will be. And my understanding is that it's 100,000 people who are coming into Moore County.
250,000.
Oh, so I am off by a lot. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, for anyone listening from outside, the population of Moore County is just over 100,000. Right. So we are going to see a huge influx of people. I remember the restaurants being really busy. I remember and this is 2014, I remember being very impressed with Pinehurst police managing traffic, particularly parking and movement around the traffic circle.
Actually, their plan, that goes back to 1999, their first U.S. Open. They still use many of the traffic plans from back then. It was a benchmark for the USGA, but go ahead.
I remember it being, well managed. So, I mean, whatever they started in the 90s and they're continuing on, makes for a very good visiting, experience. Mm-hmm. And it makes it awfully nice for the people who live here and are suddenly exposed to twice or almost 3 times as many people, being able to get along, go on with your normal life.
Yeah.
For the guitar shop, I mean, I think about if we tried to have an event around the U.S. Open, I don't know that it would work. I think there's opportunities to be exposed to new customers, and I think maybe there's marketing opportunities there. But it's almost, you have to capitalize on the people who are already coming, as opposed to having anyone else come in. It's like trying to have customers come in on Spring Fest Day.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can come in, but you can't park. So
Right.
good luck with that. It is, if nothing else, an amazing opportunity for exposure to more people. And hopefully those people will come back to Seagrove or to Aberdeen or Southern Pines and just visit for the sake of visiting.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about something else that's fun. What's great about tourism and what's great about our destination and it's growing is that every year we have something new to promote. There's always new product. I go to tourism events statewide and counties sometimes are promoting this. They promote the same thing year in and year out. So we're blessed to be able to have new products. So we've got Mike and Neubauer, who owns Southern Pines Brewing Company, converting the Buggy Factory in Carthage into a 2-story restaurant and bar that's going to open early 2024, and then Beehawk.
I was hoping you were going to mention Beehawk.
Brad Halling, American Whiskey Co. If you don't know the story, Brad Halling is truly an American hero. His wife, Jess, is a powerhouse rock star. And so that is going to be truly a destination distillery.
And restaurant. They'll have a nice restaurant attached as well.
And I think this goes to the bigger picture of, I think people that were stationed at Fort Bragg maybe would go live somewhere else. But now they're staying with their kids and raising families. This is such a great place to raise a family, as you know, with 3 kids. Talk about Beehawk and how much of an anchor that's going to be and how much the Hallings mean to the town of Southern Pines.
So the Hallings and the Neubauers, those are both examples of how these people who are very experienced and type A personalities get things done. They have a lot of background and wealth of knowledge and desire to do something, are able to apply that. I mean, most of them retire because it's military. They're retiring at an age where they still have the rest of their life,
right.
and they have this sense of ability and accomplishment that they really get to pour into some place. And we have been lucky that it's been us. I mean, we got to go on a tour of Beehawk Distillery, and they're not just putting in a distillery. They are building what will be, as you said, an anchor. It's a beautiful facility where not only will they be creating, spirits of whatever sort. I guess whiskey is the
whiskey, and then that will be under the I forgot the name of the label, Sergeant Valor, and then the Madam Colonel will be the vodka and gin.
Okay, so
I've been there numerous times. Didn't you know what I'm talking about? So I talked to Brad and Jess a lot.
Yep, we're lucky that we've benefited from that expertise that comes into town. In that middle part of life, being retired from the military, but also having worked so hard and be so disciplined in something that they can apply it to something else. And their businesses have become what it is. And I think that the town and the residents are actually going to see the benefits of it.
And if you're not familiar with Brad's story, he served in the Battle of Mogadishu, October 3rd, 1993. Part of the reason why it's called Beehawk, and it is part of his healing from the trauma of that day. Because, he was probably should have lost his life, but he survived because of the comrades that he served with that lost their lives that day. So this is part of the recovery for him. Mm-hmm. I learned that. So it's a tremendous honor
through that trauma.
Yeah, and it's about, they're going to make great product, but it's all about God, country, service, sacrifice, and it's.
And I think you'll see that when they finish the distillery and you go in as a customer, I think that you will have that experience and that understanding of their product from the visiting.
You no doubt will get that vibe for sure.
They are one of those Instagram accounts that if somebody is on Instagram and wants to follow them, I always enjoy seeing his post and learning more about his history.
I saw Reagan Parsons. We're at an event last night at the 1901 Lounge, which just reopened at the Jefferson Hotel, so you need to check that out.
Are they going to have live music? Space. I think that's
they actually
will
have live music. They have live music. As we record this, they will have live music tonight. And they will reopen the outdoor space, folks. I know some people are really disappointed with that. They won't be cranking big-time loud bands till midnight, but they'll have more quieter acoustic and maybe some karaoke with Patrick McKee till about 10 o'clock at night because they have paying guests. So we're great to see them come back to the community.
So even though we live downtown, we live at the corner of Pennsylvania and Broad, and can hear the music, by the way, when it's at the Jefferson or at the Beltry, either place. But on our wedding night, we stayed at the Jefferson Inn.
Oh, wow.
And that outdoor music scene and just, I think, sitting on a patio and having a drink at the end of the night is what a great sense of community. And I think a lot of people who do visit town have been missing it. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of happy people to see it reopen.
I mentioned this to you one day when I saw you at lunch at 195. talking about social district. This seems like a great, well, obviously is a great walking downtown.
It is.
Seemed like it would be enhanced even better, perhaps, if you want to carry in an adult beverage from, say, the Growler Company and walk over and do some shopping down Broad Street. Is there an opportunity to maybe do that?
I think it's worth looking into. I would have to put some personal research into what a social district looks like when it's well managed. I think my first concern is that people drinking on the streets causes a little bit of mayhem or mess, or just, is that the train?
No, I think it's the post office.
Okay, I was
the
like,
post
it
office
is
is right
awfully
behind us,
loud.
so they have some of their trams are
Okay.
moving stuff around. But
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry for the interruption.
that's okay.
I was going to be surprised if you could hear the train so well.
We do hear it for sure.
Okay. So a social district, I would have to look into a little bit more of what that
Yeah.
means, what it means for the quality of life for the people who live here, to make sure that we're protecting that. Because I think there's absolutely an opportunity. I just want to make sure that we're not welcoming a group of people who are going to abuse the ability to drink in public.
Right. Yeah. I understand the concern, but hopefully it gets vetted, and we'll see what happens. At least take a look at it. And then, one more thing I was going to ask you about downtown. Oh yeah, the right across from our building is going to be a 4-story. I know that was just recently approved. The 4-story building that will have, I think, 2 stories of condos and then shopping and then parking down beneath. And that's going to be right near the corner of New York and Bennett Street, which is diagonally across from the Growler Company.
Yes. So it will, height-wise, because the topography of that land is actually lower than where we sit right now, or the Growler, it will be lower than the maximum height of the Growler. So although it's 4 stories,
Okay.
It won't look as obtrusive or intrusive as a large building. But since I've sat on council, we hear over and over that people don't want huge apartment buildings. They don't want, seas of parking lot. They don't want, sprawl as far as something that is lacking character. I think that we want to keep this focus on development that has character and feels like Southern Pines. And when that project came to the town council, a lot of people said, it's just too big. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at the picture and said, if he can do this, if he can build it to make it look like this building, that is absolutely what we've been asking for. We've been asking for character. We've been saying that mixed use is valuable. Instead of having apartments, throw some condos over retail and have an area where people can live and work and get to other parts of town. Some of what Southern Pines residents, I think, are stuck in this mentality of everyone needs a house with a 2-car garage and 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone needs that. I think that there's a piece of our population who is desperately looking for a place to live, and particularly a place to own, which the condos would offer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I harken back, and I remember I was at the character district meeting, and I used to live in downtown Asheville. I drove my car maybe 100 miles a month.
Yep.
I walked to work. I walked to restaurants. I walked to shopping. It was great. I enjoyed that. And I could see that happening here, where you can live, work, play in Southern Pines and not be obtrusive. You're not in the historic district.
But it affronts the historic district because your property is on it. And so I think that at the council level, what we want is for anything that is just outside that 8-block historic district, we want it to at least complement, so that if there is historic property here, whatever's across the street ought to look like it fits in.
Absolutely.
And I just want to really quickly touch back on when you said the 8 districts of the historic property in downtown and to kind of like don't touch it. We're okay touching it.
Yeah.
We're okay building in it. There's a piece of property next to the Pilot that is right now grass because an old pizza place burnt down at one point. As long as whatever happens in those 8 blocks downtown looks and feels historic, which for Southern Pines is like a turn-of-the-century brick building, whether painted or not. I think that's really what we want to focus on is something that looks like it belongs, looks like it was always there.
Yeah, for sure. That would be wonderful, and I think people would appreciate that. One thing we're proud of here at the CVB is that we're doing really well, and thank everybody in Moore County for being so hospitable. I mean, people come here for a reason. We talked about that, but we do want to increase our occupancy tax from 3 to 6%. The county commissioners are considering that. In light of that, and to preview that, and kind of our vision was when we had this one-time project fund, we just had a $1 million project fund. We awarded $821,000 in grants recently. What we want to show and demonstrate to the county commissioners is if you give us that increase with additional dollars, we want to spend that money. We know this area is going to grow. We want to be part of that and part of those solutions.
Yeah, we absolutely appreciate the investment in our communities. I mean, you'll put money into the Whitehall track, which is something that will serve visitors, but also serve our residents. And then the skate park, which I mean, my kids keep begging me to go back to Troy to their skate park.
Right.
And I don't want to drive 45 minutes. It's a great skate park. But I think it's something that we'll see a lot of young families come into town and use.
And some other dollars went to the Weymouth Center for some capital improvements. I'll get back to the Weymouth Center in a second, but then we also had some money for Cameron and also for the Sportsplex down in Aberdeen. So we want to share those dollars with municipalities and nonprofits. Our board still has to form a committee, and we're going to go through. We had a board meeting last night talking about we need to come up with a formula to demonstrate to the county commissioners this is how we plan to spend the money. We envision it being mostly for capital projects. It could be for one big capital project.
It's a big impact if you do it that way, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I merely steer the ship. It's really up to those people that, I want to share that vision, but our board really has that vision. And with people like Tom Pashley and Kelly Miller and Bonnie McPeak and everybody on our board, they share that same vision as we grow. One thing that we did here, and when we do research, the thing that most people want to see here is an amphitheater. And I know the Weymouth Center, they have plans, a long-range plan to build an amphitheater. And perhaps maybe have walking, so you can go have a nice dinner at Ashton's or Chapman's or Chef Warren's and take a nice lighted walking path to the Weymouth Center to see a show. And maybe that's an art walk, who knows? But those types of things, that's what we're kind of envisioning we want to do and see happen, not next year, but over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, we could see that happening.
I think we need to have perspectives of what's the goal in 10 or 20 years. And if having an amphitheater is something that's important to town, I think we have to start addressing it now in order to see those things start to come to life. But I think it's a great opportunity to have people feel like Southern Pines is a walking town, but the minute you walk up to Weymouth, you realize how walkable it really is. We can walk from downtown up into the Weymouth Center and walk through the Boyd track so easily. I mean, there's miles of walking space right there.
Yeah.
And I think an amphitheater would be really nice. I have not seen the plans. I'll have to talk to Katie Wyatt about the specifics of it, but she has mentioned that there was interest in doing one. And I absolutely think that it would serve a need in the community.
And I always ask this of the folks we have here on the podcast, as a resident, if somebody were coming to town for the first time ever and you said, you know what, if I had a weekend or a 3-day weekend, what would be the things that I would recommend? Let's say what 2 activities would you recommend people do, and maybe 2 or 3 of your favorite restaurants? I know you're married and putting you on the spot here.
I know.
I don't want you to leave anybody out.
This is why I send people to you. So these are probably typical answers. Sweet Basil's is like one of my favorite restaurants. It's right across the street from our house. Yep. They have great lunch. Go early or late because they get awfully busy in the afternoon, right in the middle of lunch. 195 is what I would consider a hidden gem.
Yeah.
It has fabulous food, but unless you know it's there, you're not going to just stumble upon it. And then most people I know, when they come to town, they go to Reservoir Park or they go out into one of the community areas to walk. Weymouth Nature Preserve is the other one that I feel like I take when people come into town. That's where we go out because I feel like there's a lot to do and experience for small children in the nature room, and then to go out on a small hike and really see what you can see, the burn marks on the trees or the growth coming up after between burns. I think it's a great way to experience the sandhills. And gosh, you could play golf too, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you, since you own the guitar shop, do you play guitar at all?
No, I don't play guitar. I have tried. Actually, the people who work at the guitar shop have very generously tried to teach me several times. I'm not very good at it. But we have great musicians. I'm just better at handling the boring stuff. I can handle the taxes and payroll, and I think that they appreciate that part.
Well, as a former certified financial planner, and you probably still have that expertise. I can use some stock tips maybe. We'll have to talk after the show.
Okay.
But Taylor Clement, Mayor of Southern Pines, thank you so much for joining us on Paradise in the Pines. It's been a pleasure. We can talk for days about issues facing the community, the destination, and best of luck to you and the town council for having the vision. And we appreciate working with you and Reagan and everybody here in Southern Pines and throughout Moore County. But best of luck as mayor of Southern Pines.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so if you want to learn more about tourism, go to our website, homeofgolf.com. We're going to have a roll out a new website starting in 2024, which will include artificial intelligence. So you want to check that out. We're on the cutting edge. We're one of the first CVBs in the country that are going to be doing this. So check out homeofgolf.com in 2024. If you want to check out our videos, go to our YouTube channel, Home of American Golf. And if you want to download this podcast, just search Paradise in the Pines and check it out and share it with your friends. Taylor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Phil.
We'll see you next time.
See you soon.